Hi, and welcome to the virtual CISO moment. Alec, Sirois joins us. He is the co-founder and Ignite Cybersecurity. Alec, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
I think it's so funny. It's just like I was obsessing over making sure that I pronounce your last name correctly, and here I stumbled over your first name to begin with. That's one of the things I found about, like, of course, obviously being a podcast host is not my profession, but I've been doing it for some time now. In fact, I believe that you are like number 84, 85, 86 of these interviews, so getting close to 100. We'll see who it is.
Awesome.
But I always obsess over names, and it's like it's the easy ones that always throw me for a loop. So to start out today, let's hear about your cybersecurity journey. Why did you get into cybersecurity, and how did you get to where you're at, being the co-founder of Ignite Cybersecurity? And what is Ignite Cybersecurity?
Well, it all started with definitely my father. My father, all since I'm a very young guy. I'm in my mid 20s.
Mm-hmm.
So, all growing up, I was growing up around something IT based, something security with my father around. He was always traveling back and forth to Boston by train when I was very little. There was computers all around the house that I got to play and break and get to discover all the cool tricks that my sysadmin father at the time could show me about computers, and he wanted to bring me into the world and all that stuff. And that interest stuck as I got older, because as I was in um, middle school and high school, I started just try to teach myself programming, but just basic scripting like HTML, VBS, batch scripting, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually I got to the point where I could help my father with his job and sit in on meetings and learn all these things that he's doing. And eventually we came to the conclusion, just from uh, being in the world of cybersecurity, that email is a big problem. And uh, that's how we started Ignite Cyber, by creating a pen testing suite, basically
Mm-hmm.
just to use while doing email implementations. The email pen testing suite didn't exist at the time, so we had to build it. And at first, it wasn't a business; it was just a tool, and it was just hosted online. And now it's a subscription that you can purchase, and that's how Ignite Cyber came to be.
Awesome. And I should note that you also have the distinction of being our first legacy, because your father, Chuck, was, I believe I have his first name right, correct?
Yep,
He
Charles
was
Chuck.
he was one of our earliest guests back in the late spring of 2022. So
Yes.
that's amazing. So pretty soon we'll have to have your child on. Do you have any children?
No, too young.
Okay, well, we'll get working on it so we can continue the
All
legacy
right,
here.
all
So
right. I'll be sure to.
well, when we come back after a quick break, I want to dive into what you think is one of the most significant threats to small and mid-sized businesses today in the infosec realm. I have a sneaking suspicion that it might be email related. So we'll get on that in just a moment. vCISO Services is a small, specialized, veteran-owned information security firm with a calling, founded on Christian values and focused on the needs of small and mid-sized businesses. Our passion is to help small and mid-sized businesses gain a fighting chance in an increasingly hostile cybersecurity threat environment by providing executive part-time virtual CISO services, information security risk management services, and CISO advisory services. Check them out at vcisoservices.com. All right, so we started to talk a little bit about email security. I don't want to influence your objectivity, but what would you consider a significant threat to small and mid-sized businesses today in the infosec realm?
Well, I can say objectively that it would have to be email,
I'm so surprised.
being that it's the number one initial entry vector into
Uh-huh.
organizations, and the fact that, like, I believe the number is 95 plus 96% of all breaches in organizations start with an email of some type. And then it gets into, I deal in the world of
Hmm.
spoofing and DNS. So What percentage of the phishing is spoofing? Well, according to Valmail, it's 90%. So spoofing, phishing, this is at the forefront of all cybersecurity right now, and has been for a long time.
So, what is if that's the case? I would tend to agree that that is a launching point for a lot of the issues we see. Um, what can folks do to mitigate that risk? I mean, you can't just stop, but you can't just stop email. I mean, the world runs on email as much as people don't want it to. What can you do?
Well, sort of the best practices sort of hurt these organizations because the best practices are to start uh, by ramping up the sensitivity and strictness of your fraud controls.
Hmm.
And when you go and read about these, how to do these best practices, it says this basically set your there's three options in your DNS you can set for policy, and that would be none, which is basically just monitoring what's happening, and then quarantine, which is put your fraudulent mail in a quarantine, and
Hmm.
then reject, which is just to drop it, which people don't normal admins don't normally actually drop the mail on the line. It usually goes into an admin quarantine anyway. So people start with none, but the problem with none is that it still leaves your domain spoofable,
Right.
and people just you know set it to none and then forget it. They don't continue ramping up the strictness of their fraud controls, and then also they don't play with like anti-phishing and anti-spam
Hmm.
in like Outlook and mail providers and stuff like that, or similar. Uh, they're off by default, and similar in DNS is there's no DMARC and no SPF by default.
Right.
It's by default spoofable. So even if you just buy a domain fresh, as soon as it's not parked, as soon as it has an IP, it's spoofable.
Hmm.
So even just purchasing domains to own, just having them in your ownership and not having your DNS configured correctly is dangerous, because say you purchased somebody purchased gregschaefer.com, they just
They stole it from me.
they stole
Darn
it
it.
from you, and they just have it in their possession just to have it so nobody else has it. Well,
Hmm.
you don't have DMARC on, so now anybody in the world can start emailing as gregschaefer.com. But I have seen DNS providers start to do like Cloudflare. I've seen automatically put a DMARC in, but
Hmm.
set for none. So it's might as well not be there.
That's like folks like putting in. I had this. I had one guest who mentioned this at one point in time that we were talking about firewalls. This was last year sometime, and that this one MSP had put in a firewall, and they had left it configured as the default allow any. And it's like, so what good does that do? It's like it's not. It's you're basically paying money for nothing,
An
and
expensive
so you're
yeah.
saying that's essentially the same thing. If you buy a domain, and I don't have gregschaefer.com, I have gregschaefer.info, by the way.
Mm.
But if you buy a domain and you don't automatically put DMARC in, that's one problem. But if you have a service that puts DMARC in, and you don't know that they're actually looking for spoofing, how can you, what do you have to do? Talk with your provider to get verification? Okay, you put it in and it's actually doing something.
Well, there is you can do it manually, so you can basically send yourself an email and read the headers and do like manual analysis on your own emails. But
Right.
there's a bunch of tools out there, and I had to develop those too. So we developed Email Spoof Test, which is the tool that you could subscribe to, that is under Ignite Cyber,
Hmm.
the email pen testing suite. That didn't exist before to validate. So DNS lookup tools and readers to parse your DNS and tell you if the syntax is correct existed. But
Hmm.
there's no actual test to actually try to spoof your domain or try to do these things to your domain. So people were just setting it and guessing that it was all right. And there's a policy there, so it must be all right. And so for the lookup, I also am the co-creator of this tool. It's a free tool called Spoofy. You can get to it. It's not just a GitHub page. You can get
Hmm.
to it by going to spoofy.email. And Spoofy is a tool that you give it a list of domains, and it will evaluate in mass, in bulk, whether your domain is spoofable based on the DNS records. So it's
Okay.
like these other tools like MX Toolbox, but the problem with MX Toolbox is I was in a unique position where I was hammering on domain tools MX Toolbox forever. And I came across instances where it was reporting bad results. It wasn't reading DNS correctly. And that's
Hmm.
a paid bulk DNS tool. And then I realized I had to go around the internet and look for other DNS tools that looked up the in bulk correctly, but they all looked it up incorrectly. So I had to get with my friend Matt and create a tool that did the lookups correctly. So it's the only one that exists that does it correct.
Well, that's annoying when you think that what it is that you're using is not doing what you think that it's supposed to be doing, which is something that we were just talking about too with DMARC and service providers and
Right.
domains and it being. So okay, you mentioned getting back on small and mid-sized businesses for a moment here, looking from their point of view. You mentioned about looking at the email headers, but from my experience, um, most small and mid-sized businesses, they don't even know what an email header is, and they don't know how to get to it. It's almost like pulling teeth trying to explain, hey, can you go over here, copy this, and then paste it and send it to me in an email or a text or something and all that, and I'll evaluate it for you. So that's kind of cumbersome. I want to now flip over back to Ignite, because I'm getting the impression that maybe Ignite is something that Ignite cybersecurity that can help small and mid-sized businesses figure out their email security posture, but not have to have the knowledge of reading email headers. So, can you walk down that path a little bit and explain a little bit more about Ignite?
Yeah. So Ignite right now is basically two tools, which is the email tool and a DLP tool. But as far as the email tool, basically you don't have it, it when you want to figure out how your DNS is being reflected in SMTP, you want to read the headers. So the
Hmm.
headers will reveal where it's coming from, the bot, what the body is, and a bunch of other information about spam and ARC and if DMARC passed, if SPF failed. Um, what email spoof test does is it sends 10 emails of
Okay.
all different misconfigurations to your email, and you basically fill out a chart that will grade you based on what you received in your inbox or junk or didn't receive at all. So some of it is like DKIM misconfiguration, some of it is SPF misconfiguration, some of it is DMARC configuration. And based on what you receive, we'll give you a grade. And then with that grade, we can tell you, hey, you got uh, email 1, 2, and 3. Well, this means, it's a SPF problem or a DKIM problem, depending on the combination of what misconfigurations you're able to receive. But the caveat is that that's just what you can receive. One of the tests is an email from you to yourself. So
Hmm.
it's trying to be you and spoof to yourself. And that specific test is as if somebody was trying to spoof you from the outside. And that's what people can't do with just a DNS lookup. That's an actual validation is did it get dropped on the line?
Right.
And the fraud should be dropped on the line. If it's fraudulent, if it didn't come from the sender it said it did, there's two things happening. Either your partner's whoever you're receiving email from's infrastructure is super messed up and it's their fault and they need to go fix it. That's their problem. It's not your problem. It's their problem. And people get that confused.
Hmm.
And if you are dropping it, that's what's supposed to happen. Their infrastructure is misconfigured in a way where SMTP thinks that they're not allowed to send mail the way they are.
Right.
So
So is this is Ignite Cyber, is this a subscription service then that a business can use and test their email periodically, or
well,
talk a little bit more about the model?
the base tool is free, but there's some
Oh, okay.
advanced So like the where it sends you 10 emails, that's free. Anybody can go and do that a
And how do they do
bunch
that?
of
They go
times.
to
They
ignitecyber.com
they
or
go to emailspooftest.com
oh, okay.
and they just put in their email and click send, and it'll send you 10 emails, and you just tell the program which emails you got, and it will evaluate, and then based on that you can email us, we can give you tips. But the subscription model is basically we have some advanced tooling, and that's basically you're able to um, directly do spoof tests. So we have a spoofer tool in there that we've de-weaponized. So basically, you can only spoof two addresses that are registered with us.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. I was
So
just
you
thinking
can't
about that.
go and use it as a weapon or anything.
That's
You can't
good.
use it for doing engagements. So now, like, if you have gregschaefer.com again, you want to go test if somebody can spoof as you can go and um, spoof any other domain to your own domain. So, say you're a IT admin. IT admins would want to buy the subscription because they're evaluating a bunch of domains every day, all the time, and say they have their test inbox. They can go and try to spoof any domain to their test inbox and test their infrastructure, pen test their infrastructure from anywhere from the web. It's a full email pen test suite.
So is this a subscription service that you offer on a monthly basis, a yearly basis? What sort of packages do you have?
I have all the packages.
All the packages. He's got all the
I got
packages.
all the packages. I got packages for one domain for 1 week, one
Uh-huh.
domain for a month, and one domain for a year. And then I also have packages for just direct email help. Just a guy who's doing email all day, email projects. Get your help from me, and I can help you with your email infrastructure and get it locked down real solid. Um, and I've been doing my own novel research through Spoofy. What I did for the development of Spoofy was I went and tested every single possible SPF and DMARC combination that you could put in DNS
Hmm.
and tested by hand to see which combinations are spoofable, and then put them into a chart for everybody to see.
That's interesting. I mean, that must have been an awful lot of hard work. You said spoofy.email before too, and I wanted to ask you what was the spelling on that?
SPOOFY.
Okay, see, I had IE down here. That's why I
Hmm.
asked. I knew I had it wrong. But now if they wanted to try um, the um, the email spoofer, the 10, they go to emailspooftest.com. If someone wanted to find out more about Ignite Cyber, uh,
IgniteCyber.co.
.co. Okay, so that's
Yeah.
easy enough to get to.
Yeah.
It's interesting stuff. I believe that I tried it last year first when I first spoke with Chuck, and I need to give it a whirl again too because it's an interesting, particularly for those of us that are in the virtual CISO world. It does help. That's one of the things that I've found that is like a great mystery among small and mid-sized businesses is kind of understanding, or rather the lack of understanding about email spoofing and what DMARC, DKIM, and SPF does and all of that. And it gets very difficult. And then once you increase the difficulty factor, the implementation factor goes down. It's like an inverse relationship. So anything to like simplify from our perspective, the ability to say, look, here's your problem, and being able to do the 10 addresses. So um, I'm sure that there's a lot of stress involved with running a company and it being a cybersecurity company and all of that. Well, what's one thing that you do, Alec, to kind of get away from the stress of everything cyber?
Well, kind of a cave dweller. I'm on the computer all the time. I think I experience less stress than the average business owner because I'm passionate about what I do. So I'm always making email tools. I've got a
Hmm.
bazillion email tools under my belt. Uh, and I like to build the tools. And I'm when I'm on the you have to, I think so. I think the answer is you got to be passionate about it. Being passionate about what you do, about your little niche corner that you have in the industry, is really important for avoiding burnout. Because I can say, I mean, I've been working on these email tools for like 3 or 4 years now. I haven't felt any burnout. I just really pace myself. I don't feel like I'm in a rush. This email problem has been around forever. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah, it
So
has been.
I don't feel like I have to rush, or I'm not, and I'm my own company, so I don't have anybody breathing down my neck about I need this tool out, or I need you to do this, or XYZ. I just kind of go with the flow, and it's a subscription model. So, I just put their information into a file, and
Hmm.
then they can use the tool. So there's very I and then so the three things would be passionate about what you're doing, pace yourself, don't rush, because then burnout's coming.
Right.
And mm,
Maybe keep it simple.
yeah, reduce. It's business oriented, so I was trying to find a way to say it, but kind of keep overhead low.
Yeah, yeah,
You don't
yeah.
just keep overhead really, really low, and that reduces a lot of the stress. You don't want to have to be interacting with every little thing that happens with your business. You kind of want to put some automation to kind of make it kind of go by itself.
I'd agree with all of those. And it's interesting because of all the times that I've been asking that question, we talk about in information security, cybersecurity, we talk about controls, and we talk about uh, detective controls, we talk about preventative controls, and restorative controls. And most of the ones are more like restorative. They say, well, I'll go out hiking, or I'll bike ride, or I'll do something physical, or work in a hobby, play guitar or something like that. But this is, I think, one of the first times, if not the first, that really the question has resulted in a preventative control. So in order, how you deal with stress, if you eliminate the factors that cause the stress, that's a good piece of career advice from someone that is not quite as
Yeah,
old as I am. So
yeah, I'm not deep into my career, but it just seems, I'm not about, I'm about what works. I'm not about like speculation or anything. These are things that those are just things that just objectively work for like, here's the actionable solution. I'm not here's the if it is an actionable solution, I'm not thinking about it.
right. Well, and you said you're not deep in your career yet, and so that comes to the last question. What are your future plans?
Well, I'm always my future plans, definitely, I'm in the process of writing an email security book, because it's going to take a very long time. It's going to take years, because
Hmm.
I'm going to make it the ultimate book. It's going to include everything email security in there. You only need one book for email security, and this will put
Wow.
and the whole book is going to be in layman's terms. It's not going to be like, you're not going to be confused with technicals. There's going to be a technical piece, and then there's going to be a this is what this means piece. And for example, like SPF is, you could say all this DNS trickery and all these technical things about what SPF is, sender policy framework, all this, but what really is it's a whitelist. It's a whitelist for hosts. You
Hmm.
put hosts in the whitelist. What are hosts? IPs and domains. Like, that's it. The book's good. The book's
And
gonna
that's something that, like,
demystify everything.
yeah, small and mid-sized businesses can definitely relate and understand that as well too, because as I said before, that's often one of the big challenges, where it's just like they get so far like deep into the techno babble, as a former boss of mine used to say, and or techno mumbo jumbo, I think was her exact words. But well, very interesting. Looking forward to seeing how that progresses. I know it takes years, but hopefully it won't be too many years for that to come out, because I mean, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be in the field. It'll be a few years at least, but I'm looking forward to seeing that. So thank you so much for joining us today,
Hey,
Alec.
thanks for
Appreciate it.
having me. It was fun.
All right. So everybody, if you interested more in email security, again, remember that free tool is at emailspooftest.com. 10 email messages sent to your domain. Give it a whirl. See what happens. Ignite cyber.co is the main website. Did I get that right?
Yep. And you can find all of my like side projects, like free tools like spoofing stuff, at calamity.email. Email
Calam-
everything. Calamity.
calamity.email.
People on
Okay.
the internet know me as Calamity or Clam.
Clam.
Right.
All right. Well, Clam, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate it. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, stay secure.